everybody, my name is Chase here, and I hope you don't mind. I'm currently in the middle of a satanic ritual. I'm not even a Satanist, I just like the aesthetic.
And I know what you're gonna say, Chase, you can't summon demons, this is a family channel, but it's fine. Mario's here.
When it comes to children's media, one of my favorite things is when it gets really scary for no reason. You know what I'm talking about, right? When companies decide it's time to traumatize the youth with disturbing imagery or some interesting implications.
You know, for kids.
I think the reason that these were so effective is because they were made for a younger audience, so they couldn't rely on things like blood and gore to be scary. They had to find more creative and unique ways to unsettle you that wouldn't change that age rating. And for that reason, I've always found them to be insanely memorable and effective. There's a reason something like Coraline is more likely to stick with you than the 97th Conjuring movie. One of the ones that I remember from my childhood was Luigi's Mansion. What was originally a small tech demo featuring Luigi in a haunted mansion to show off Nintendo's new hardware would turn into a full-blown launch title for the Nintendo GameCube, one of my favorite consoles of all time. It's what many people consider the Mario series' attempt at a horror game. I mean, the fat Italian plumber was stepping his foot into every genre of video games imaginable, so I guess it was only a matter of time until we got here. But what was interesting is that they were giving the other Mario brother the spotlight this time. I know there was Mario is Missing or whatever, but I don't think any sane person actually counts that. Yeah, the GameCube would break the tradition of having a new console launch with a brand new Mario platformer, instead giving us an action-adventure game starring everyone's favorite color swap. I distinctly remember seeing it for the first time on YouTube through Chugga Conroy's playthrough of it and saying, yeah, I want that. Where I then proceeded to get it for my birthday that year and played the ever-living shit out of it. I have replayed this game more times than I can count, and I've made it a kind of tradition to revisit it around Halloween to get into the spooky seasonal mood. So I figured why not use this time to talk about one of my favorites of the GameCube era. Listen, just let me have this one. I gotta take a break from torturing myself one of these days.
What the fuck is a leapfrog?
So one day, Luigi receives an unexpected letter in the mail informing him and his brother Mario that he's won a contest that he never entered in the first place. Listen man, I get it. I'm still convinced I won that Danimal sweepstakes.
They're gonna call me any minute.
But instead of a luxury cruise ride, the prize is a giant fucking mansion in the middle of the gloomiest woods I've ever seen. Mario went to investigate but never came back, so Luigi decides to head there himself. Upon entering, he finds the place is incredibly haunted and teeming with ghosts with no sense of personal space. He's nearly ganged up on, but fortunately he's saved by a man known as Professor Egad, a scientist who specializes in ghost hunting using his new invention, the Poltergeist 3000 and the ghost turning captured spirits into paintings to hang up in his art gallery. It's just too bad a mysterious entity freed all of them from their frames and now freely roam the mansion. The entity in question is King Boo, who has captured Mario, turning him into his own painting to be part of his personal collection and wishes to complete the set with the other Mario brother. So it's up to Luigi to brave the horrors of the mansion, return the ghosts to their fortress, and defeat King Boo to save his brother while he shits himself at every corner. Most people know Luigi's Mansion as the game that gave the Green Machine his scaredy cat persona to separate him from his brother. But strangely, this isn't the first instance of portraying Luigi as cowardly. No, that honor goes to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show predating this game by 12 years.
I can't! I'm allergic to mountains!
Does make you wonder whether or not it was a coincidence or Nintendo actually took inspiration from the 80s cartoon. I mean, either way, this is still the first time he's been characterized like this in the mainline series, and the one people clearly remember more. It undoubtedly makes him the more interesting Mario brother of the two. Mario himself is usually portrayed as stoically heroic, which always gets the job done, with Luigi just being green? His new personality not only makes him more distinct, but also makes him endearing in a way. This man is terrified of everything in this place, but he still braves on and conquers the challenge in front of him to save his brother. What a guy! And it left a huge imprint on this franchise because this characterization stuck hard, and I'm glad it did. The Professor is also a great character who'll get a few more appearances in the franchise. And the Poltergeist 3000 isn't his only invention, but we'll get to that sometime in the future. But my favorite character in the whole game is easily the fortune teller, Madame Clairvoya. She's the only friendly ghost in the entire mansion that helps Luigi by giving him readings on the whereabouts of Mario, and she's just fucking hilarious. Her dialogue cracks me up every time, like how she says that she's a licensed letter opener, or when she exclaims that Mario's hat has indeed been washed. She even willingly goes back to her painting when it's all over, even if she still fights back when you try to catch her. I mean, it makes sense. Even if you ask somebody to stab you, it's still gonna hurt. The gameplay of Luigi's Mansion is pretty simple. You have your flashlight that can be toggled on and off with the B button, and your trusty Poltergeist 3000 to suck up ghosts. You explore the mansion to find keys to explore more of the mansion to catch the portrait ghost and the boss at the end of the area. The best way I can describe it would be Diet Resident Evil. I wouldn't call anything in Luigi's Mansion scary, it's more scary themed. There's no jump scares or anything like that, and I don't know if I'd even call anything unsettling. What this game does have, however, is a great sense of atmosphere. You can tell that Nintendo was really flexing their hardware muscles with their new launch title because Luigi's Mansion looks incredible for the GameCube. It's one of the best looking games in the system. All the different lighting and dust effects make rooms and areas feel that much more immersive. This place really feels like a rundown abandoned mansion that at one point these ghosts called home. And the way Luigi will nervously hum the different music like he's trying to calm himself down, the constant lightning strikes illuminating rooms for a split second, ghosts laughing at you as you move down the hallway, and especially the use of chilling music does a wonderful job at making the mansion feel foreboding as you progress through the different floors. But it still manages to do all of that while still having this comforting feeling that makes the game relaxing to play. To me, there's nothing like playing this game in the Halloween season with all the lights off while you get really cozy in your armchair. It's something that the sequels would stray further away from, focusing on making the tone more lighthearted and bouncy, and while I like the style of those games too, I like the way they do it here so much more. They don't shy away from these elements, which I think gives Luigi's Mansion a distinct identity. The game's structure, on the other hand, can be seen as a little rigid. There are a lot of rooms on each floor, but more often than not, only one of them is accessible, and keys only open one specific door, meaning that progression is a matter of going to that room, clearing it out to get the key which opens up the next room which you go to, maybe catch a portrait ghost, and repeat until you reach the boss at the end of the area. Once in a while, they'll give you an option of which room you want to tackle first, but it doesn't happen very often and is a little superfluous. I don't think it ever gets dull or anything, but it is very restrictive. There are puzzles, but calling them puzzling might be giving them a little too much credit. They are incredibly simple and mostly boil down to spraying the thing with the correct element. Like water puts out fire? Oh, go figure. The only one that actually is kind of creative is this one, where you have to notice that there's a button on the wall reflected in the mirror, but that's the only one that stuck out to me personally. So yes, progression is very linear, but there are no fixed camera angles, which makes Luigi's Mansion better than Resident Evil by default. You can even skip the stupidly long door opening animations. I also find the combat to be way more fun. To catch ghosts, you have to flash in with your flashlight to expose their heart, where you can then play a game of tug of war with the Spectre until you manage to drain their HP down to 0. You would think this would get repetitive after doing it to every enemy, but it surprisingly never does. Catching ghosts is so much fun to do in Luigi's Mansion. It makes you feel like a Ghostbuster, and the fights are always engaging because you have to pay attention to where you have the analog stick to keep the tug of war going. It's like if fishing was fun. And when you get more than one at the end of your line and manage to catch them all at once, it's so fucking satisfying. And the sound design is choice. I love the sound that the grabber ghosts make when you suck them up. That's the sound I make when I touch a hot stove. Portrait ghosts take a little bit more effort to take down. They're kind of like mini bosses that require you to take note of your surroundings to figure out how to get them to show their heart, like waiting for Neville to yawn, playing whack-a-mole with Jarvis, or sucking up melody sheet music. Please don't ask me what I'm doing here. These guys are easily the standouts of the game. They have some of the most excellent designs and have so much charm and personality. There's also a fuck ton of them, so it never feels like you go too far without fighting one, and they're always fun and exciting to engage with. They even have some descriptions that give you a little insight into each of them. This one says, "What was meant to be a short nap seems to have turned into eternal rest for sweet Sue P." This girl was 7 years old. At least they make sure to let us know that Chauncey was born a ghost. I think infant mortality would have been a little too far. The area bosses take it a step further, transporting you into an arena featuring some more unique mechanics to take them down. Well, except for Area 4's boss, who is just another portrait ghost, which is kind of underwhelming. I'm gonna guess that was because of time constraints. The only fight I don't look forward to is Area 3's boss, Boolossus. He's fun to fight in the beginning when you're freezing as many boos as you can before he can reform, but when he's down to only a few, they become almost impossible to catch. You run around like a goddamn idiot trying to freeze the last one. It's like that fire guy from Mario 2, and I hate that thing. When it comes to completion, there's a bit of an arcade mentality. As you go through the game, you might notice the excessive amounts of cash and gold hidden in every facet of the mansion. That's because when you finish the game, it's all totaled up, and you're given a new mansion based on how much money you earned. I didn't do that well on this run. It's mostly because I forgot to water this plant. This is why I'm not a father. You're also ranked based on how well you did against portrait ghosts and bosses displayed by their frames. The highest being gold if you can manage to catch them without breaking away at all. Each time they do, you go down a rank, with silver and bronze being what you're left with. I can get gold frames for all the ghosts in Area 1 easy, but any area after that, yeah, no thank you. Getting every gold frame in every area is something that I do want to do one of these days, but that shit is gonna take an insane amount of trial and error, especially if I don't decide to just use save states because of how random these fights can be, and there's no option to refight them for a better rank, so you just have to reset the game. I mean, you are by no means required to do this, and you don't get any reward for it. The only reason to go after them is for bragging rights and because you hate yourself. But getting gold frames isn't the only thing I don't like doing when I replay this game. Well, being a Mario game about ghosts, these bastards were bound to show up at some point. It'd be kind of weird if they didn't, but fuck me if they aren't annoying. When you clear out a room and the lights come back on, there will be a boo hidden in one of the pieces of furniture, and after smoking them out with your radar, you can attempt to catch them with a total of 50 of them in the entire game. Alright, now for the bullshit. Boos can go through walls and dart toward them to get away from you every chance they get, and if that happens, you have to chase them down, and depending on where they decide to go, this can make continuing the game of cat and mouse incredibly aggravating and time consuming. Like here, every time he decides to move, I have to go into the next room, suck up all the dust to get through and make my way into the breaker room just to have another shot, and then I proceeded to repeat that process another 5 or 6 times before I finally managed to catch the fucker. And some of the late game boos have absurd amounts of health, so deciding to make their leave is inevitable. And when it happens, it makes you want to bash your head against the wall. Even more annoying is when they go into rooms you don't have access to at the moment, cause yes, they can do that. So your options are to either reset the game and go back to your last save point, or wait until you unlock that room, which depending on where it was, could be a while. I'll admit that the frustration does make it incredibly satisfying to finally catch them, especially the ones that give you a lot of trouble. It's like, yeah, fuck you! I just wish they were more of an optional quest, because while you don't need to catch all of them to finish the game, you need so many that you might as well just go after the rest. But other than that, there's not much else about Luigi's Mansion I don't like. There's a few questionable design choices, but I feel like the biggest reason it's difficult for the game's issue to bother me is because it's not that long. You can beat it in little over 3 hours. Yeah, it's really that short, but it's clearly designed to be played multiple times to get the most out of it, and I'm fine with that. You know, I can see why this was overlooked at the GameCube's launch. In a lot of ways, it only exists so Nintendo could show off the graphical power of their new system with their fancy lighting and dust effects. And with how short the game is, I can't say this would leave you with a ton of value compared to other adventures that would be released not too long after. But now that we're far removed from its initial release, it's easy to look back and see what makes it special. It's the little things. The atmosphere, the charm, the personality, and it's just so fun. It's certainly not for everybody, but that's okay. One of the things I respect the most about Luigi's Mansion, the whole series really, is that they're Mario spin-offs that don't really feel the need to remind you that they're Mario spin-offs. Especially in this day and age where Nintendo doesn't dare make something that doesn't feel like a Mario game and are watered down so much from what they're trying to be, you start wondering what's the point. Luigi's Mansion is such a breath of fresh air that is so unique, so creative, and so memorable, and I feel like that's the biggest takeaway I get from it and why people are still fond of it. It doesn't have the most complex gameplay in the world, but it doesn't need to. All it needed to be was fun, and Luigi's Mansion is a lot of fun. If you haven't played it already, then grab a copy for your GameCube as soon as you can and give it a shot. Might cost you a chunk of change, but it's still a better option than the 3DS remake. Wasn't a big fan of this one. Mostly because it was for the 3DS at a time when you had a much better and more powerful handheld right the fuck there, and you even had the engine for it. I just can't get down with this control scheme. They want you to use motion controls to tilt the flashlight and poltergeist up and down, which works but feels remarkably clunky compared to how it feels on the GameCube with its 2 analog sticks. I hear the new 3DS nipple and the Circle Pad Pro restores the original controls, but I don't have those, so this is what I'm stuck with, and with that, I would much rather just play the original with the controls I like. This is just a game that should have been made for the Switch, and because it wasn't, is held back by being on inferior hardware. And I know this is super nitpicky, but I also don't like Luigi's walking animation in this. He looks like he's walking with a stick jammed up his ass. But it's still Luigi's Mansion at the end of the game, so if you don't want to remortgage your house for a GameCube copy, then you can do a lot worse. This isn't Sonic Genesis for the GBA.
At this point, I'm just glad I can play a Mario game that doesn't have the underground thing. You sneaky bastards.